I'm gonna move these things real quick.
Yeah, do what you gotta do. It is, it's not very wide, which sometimes has a hard time like fitting things
Yeah.
in it that way, but it's like tall. It stacks up.
I'm gonna be right back. I'm going to 4:31 to take this.
Okay. I'll probably start in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes.
Yet? I'm in the city arts guild, so I'm looking to check, see if they can just put in and give me some comfortable results. Okay.
Alrighty, I'm gonna start. Hopefully some more people trickle in. If not, you'll get a little one-on-one today. Have you been to any one of these before? This is your first one? You have? Okay, nice. So today we're just gonna talk to you about credit, kind of how it's calculated, why it's important, what you use it for, all that good stuff. Do you have a credit card or anything open right now? So, well, this is gonna be good information for you then. So, what is credit? Oh, welcome. Credit.
Do you have the Zoom name? Because I haven't seen the Zoom name, that's why.
Oh yeah, no, the Zoom should be active. Sarah was getting that going, but I don't know if it's, she had what inputs in the back. I'm not sure if it's currently active right now, but nonetheless, welcome. We're talking about credit today. You came at a good time. We're just starting. Credit is basically just the act of a lender, which is the financial institution, the bank account, whatever it is, giving money to the borrower, that is the customer, that's you, with a set of terms for the borrower to pay it back. The terms can vary depending on, you know, if it's a revolving line or a closed-end loan or anything like that. We're going to talk about the different type of loans as well. Can I allow this person in? There we go. So credit allows you to borrow funds for goods and services right away and then pay that money back later, usually with interest tagged onto it. Does everybody here, anybody here, I know we talked earlier, do you guys have a credit card already, either of you two? No? Okay, you do, you do not? Very nice. We're going to talk about credit cards specifically here a little bit later. That's my favorite part about credit is credit cards. So why credit is important? Having a good credit score shapes many aspects of your future in the following ways. Number one, gives you easier approval odds and better interest rates. So if you have a better credit score or higher credit history, for one, it's going to be a lot easier to get approved for things down the road, such as like car loans, credit cards, things like that. And it will also give you better rates if so. So if you have medium credit or kind of so-so credit, you still might be able to get approved for things, but credit not only determines if you can be approved, it also determines what rate you're going to have attached to your loan. If you have better credit or higher credit score, you're going to have lower rates because you have historically proved yourself to be a more responsible buyer and thus are reflecting as kind of a lower risk to the financial institution. Better rental approval odds. A lot of times when you're applying for a place to live or anything like that, or for a job, easier to secure employment is up there too. They'll do a background check on you. And with the background check, they do what's called a soft pull on your credit. We'll talk what that is here in a little bit, but that basically just shows your credit score. And they can use that to factor in whether or not they want to rent you or hire you. Better car insurance rates. They also, a lot of times when you're applying for credit, applying for car insurance, they'll do a background check as well or a soft pull on your credit, and that can help determine your, I guess, worthiness as far as what rate they're going to offer you. Less security deposit needed for rent and utilities. If you are approved for an apartment or for something that you're renting, higher credit typically means they will charge you less in an initial security deposit. And of course, the ability to purchase your first home or any large purchase. It's really hard to buy a lot of these super big ticket items just out of pocket. A lot of times you're going to have to finance things when it's a major purchase like that, and you are not going to be able to do that unless you have some kind of credit history or credit worthiness attached to your name. So credit scores. A credit score is also known as a FICO score. FICO stands for Fair Isaac Corporation. That's the company that created the credit score to begin with. It's a number between 300 and 850 that's based on your track record of borrowing and paying money back. Obviously, 300 is the worst credit score you can have. 850 is top of the line. 850 a lot of times is really unattainable. We're going to talk here in a second about how credit is calculated. But getting an 850 credit score is not something that we should be like pursuing. Really anything above 720, you're in really good shape. 300 to 629 is generally considered bad credit. So that's normally a range that's going to be hard to get really any kind of approval. If you're in that fair area, the 630 to 689, it kind of depends on why your credit is in that area. If you are able to get approved in that range, you're generally going to have pretty high interest rates associated with your loan. 690 to 719 is considered good credit, usually provided that your income shows that you can, pay whatever loan you're applying for back. Is good. You should be good to go as far as getting approved, but your rates are not going to be the best they can possibly be. Usually 720, 730 and above is considered like tier 1 credit, which means you can pretty much get approved for whatever you're looking for. And you're normally going to have some of the best rates that are out there as well, or at least that the financial institution's offering. And you can see that's like a 130 point range there. So you don't need an 850 credit score to be in good shape. Anything 720, 730 or above, you're in good shape. So these are the credit scoring models. There are 3 credit bureaus that each produce their own credit score. Do any of you guys know what the 3 credit bureaus are? Any chance? All right. TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Have you guys heard of these companies? Yes. These are the three individuals or the three bureaus that each generate their own FICO score. They all use the same data, so they all calculate their scores the same. They use the same information that is, sent over to you. But they will all generally have a little bit different number that they're producing, just because the time frame they calculate it, the general weight they give to each category could fluctuate a little bit. So they're basically the same thing. It's just three different companies that each provide the same service. Whenever you are applying for a loan or applying for any kind of credit, or anyone's doing a credit pull, they're going to pull from one of these three credit bureaus. Most lenders use Experian. Experian is kind of the most widely used when you're at like an actual bank account or financial institution. TransUnion and Equifax are used a lot for like personal use. So if you use Credit Karma, they pull for those two. If you have like a mobile app that shows you what your credit score is, a lot of times they'll power it by those two, but it really can't fluctuate. There's no, definitive reason why someone would use one and not the other. They just kind of pick, whichever bureau they're going to use, whatever they partner with. And that's who's going to generate your credit score. There's also something called a Vantage score. Vantage is a new thing, relatively new. It's not a FICO, it's a Vantage, so it combines data from all three of those credit bureaus to kind of generate its own score. Beyond that, it works the exact same as the other ones as far as like how it's being pulled. So some financial institutions will use Experian, some will use Equifax, some will use TransUnion. Those are the three credit bureaus. Vantage is kind of a new fourth one that just pulls data from all three of those and generates its own score. And some financial institutions will use a Vantage score to calculate your credit as well. All ultimately boils down to the same thing, which is how responsibly you are borrowing money and paying money back. Sometimes Vantage score is called a tri-merge score, a tri-bureau score. But generally speaking, they're all the same thing. You can kind of see right over here what the ranges are. They're roughly the same. They use the same data. It's just different companies and different institutions that issue the scores. Questions so far? Beautiful. So this is how credit is calculated. So if you are looking to build good credit, or you're curious as to what you can do to make sure that your credit stays in good shape, this is going to be for you. 35% of your overall credit score is going to be your payment history. So payment history is how often you miss payments, how recently you've missed them, and by how many days. This is the thing that is weighed the heaviest. This is kind of the number one most important part about, building and sustaining good credit. This also means when it's like how recently you missed them and by how many days, that means that if you miss one payment, by 30 days, 5 years ago, that's not going to affect you as much as if you miss 3 payments each by 3 months in the last year. The longer it's been since you've missed a payment, the less it starts to impact. So if you have, let's say an auto loan, and you miss a payment this month, it'll take a pretty big ding to your credit report at that time. And then as time goes on, it will slowly start to raise again because you've had more time since that missed payment, provided that you go back to making your payments on time after that. Generally, missed payments will stay on your credit report for 10 years, so it will stay on there for a while. But again, as time goes on, it's weighed less. So you don't want to make it a habit to be late. But if you are, just get back to good practices next month, and eventually you'll be back in good shape. 30 days is how late you have to be before something is reported to your credit bureau. So if you miss an auto loan or a credit card payment or whatever by like a day or two, there's no need to panic. You have to be 30 days past due for it to negatively impact your credit score. Now, some financial institutions might charge you a late fee if you are 1 or 2 days late. That has nothing to do with the credit score itself. So you still want to make sure you're on time, but missing a payment by 1 or 2 days isn't gonna hurt your credit score. Next, we have amounts owed. So this is the total amount owed on all loans that you have and how much you owe compared to your available credit. This is going to come into play here in a little bit when we talk about credit cards, but basically this just means that if you have let's say, 3 credit cards, they each have a $10,000 spending limit. That means that the available credit that you have is 30,000, it's 10,000 on 3 cards. If all of them are charged to the limit, if they're all maxed out, even if you make the minimum payment on time every month and your payment history is all in good shape, if your amounts owed is super high, that still can negatively impact your credit. So you can have really good payment history, but if all your credit cards are maxed out, it shows to the credit bureaus or the people calculating your credit that you might not be the most responsible spender, and that can negatively impact your credit as well. New credit. So this is how many loans you've recently opened or applied for. We'll talk about hard credit pulls here in a little bit, but basically this just shows that if you are one day going to Chase and then Wells Fargo and then Bank of America and then Patelco and then Golden One and all these places applying, doing hard pulls on your credit to keep trying to apply for new credit, that can negatively impact your credit as well. Doing a ton of applications in a row can be viewed as like red flag behavior. It's like, why would you need to apply for a ton of loans in a short period of time? And because doing a lot of hard pulls like that or a lot of new applications is reflected that way, it can have a negative impact on your credit. It's not much, it's only 10% of how your overall credit is calculated, but it is still something you want to be mindful of, and why it's not a good idea to apply for loans or apply for any kind of credit unless it's really necessary. Length of your credit history. So this is the average length of time that you've had established credit. 2 things I want to talk about here. Number one, you have a credit card right now. You 2 said you do not. Whenever you do get your first credit card, you want to make sure that you keep that open. You don't want to close it. You're going to have down the road as you get older opportunities to get new credit cards, things that will offer you more points and higher limits and things like that. You don't have to use your first credit card throughout your whole life, but you do want to keep it open. The reason being is if you say you're 20 years old, you get your first credit card, 10 years down the road, you have, an auto loan, you have a more established, life, you have better credit cards, you're not using that old credit card anymore. If you close that credit card, that whole 10 years of credit history that you built on there all gets taken away. So your average length of credit history will go down quite a bit because the oldest thing that you have and the thing that's kind of helping your average out the longest, you're losing that. So it's really going to negatively impact 15% of how your overall credit is calculated. And yeah, if you get, 1 credit card today, 5 years down the road, you get another credit card. Now your overall average length of credit is 2.5 years, which is another reason why if you get a lot of new credit or a lot of new loans, it's more short variables that are impacting your length of credit history, which makes your average length a lot less. Another reason why you don't want to be applying for a lot of new loans unnecessarily, because it can negatively impact your credit if everything you have is, brand new. And finally, it's credit mix. So this is having diverse types of credit. This is not something we need to be chasing or trying to get right now. This will come with time. It's also only 10%, so it's not weighed super heavily either. But this just basically means that you don't want to have 10 credit cards and all of your debt is on those credit cards. You want to have a healthy mix of different types of credit. A home loan one day, maybe an auto loan, maybe student loans, credit cards, personal loans, all kinds of stuff. There's many different types of credit that are out there and they're all used for different facets of your life. So credit mix just means that as time goes on, you are utilizing different types of credit. Another reason why it's really going to be hard to get like an 850 credit score, you really can't have one unless you have a mortgage. And when you get a mortgage, if you satisfy that, if it's new, your length of credit history will go down because it's a new loan. So really the only people who have like 850 are people who have auto loans, closed and open credit cards with low balances, and home loans they've had for a really long time with like impeccable payment history. Not really realistic for every single person who's out there, and not something that's really even necessary either. But these are the general 5 pillars of credit, how they're calculated, how each one is weighed. Anybody have any questions on this? Make sense? Cool. All right, so there are 2 different types of loans in like 2 different pillars. First pillar, we have secured loans and unsecured. So a secured loan is a loan that is backed by collateral, such as a home. An auto loan would also be a secured loan, a motorcycle loan, a boat loan. Anytime that you are buying something, like an actual physical tangible thing, that is a secured loan. If the borrower does not pay, the loan can be used, or whatever you purchase can be used as collateral. As a reason for that is that, or one of the kind of effects of that is that you're gonna have lower interest rates with secured loans because the bank has, you know, more that they can recover if you don't pay the loan back. So a personal loan, a credit card, something like that is gonna have a higher interest rate than like an auto loan or a home loan. Because if you don't pay the home or you don't pay for the car, they can seize the home, they can seize the car. That's how houses go into foreclosure. That's how cars get repossessed. And because they have something they can use to recuperate that loss, the rates are gonna be a little bit lower because they don't need to make that money on the interest. Whereas if you have a personal loan and you don't pay it off, they can't take that money back from you because it's, you know, not a physical thing that they can get. So they have to charge higher interest rates to protect their assets. Flip side of that is obviously unsecured loans that are not backed by anything. Again, personal loans, credit cards, student loans are technically unsecured loans, even though you are getting an education as a result. It's not like an actual physical thing they can take. They can't take away your education if you don't pay it back. And with no collateral behind it, limits are normally lower and interest rates are going to be higher. You can get a loan for a home that is $500,000. It is much harder to get a $500,000 personal loan because, again, they can't recuperate that if you don't pay it back. Another pillar of two types of loans are installment loans and revolving loans. So installment loans basically means it is a lump sum that is borrowed all at once. You have fixed payments, you have a fixed interest rate, you pay the same amount back every month until the loan is fully paid off. And revolving is you have a limit or a credit limit, and you borrow from it and you pay it back as needed. Those payments are going to vary depending on the amount that you borrow, and those interest rates can also be a little bit flexible. So an installment loan is also going to be home loans, auto loans. Personal loans are also going to be an installment loan because you generally get the full amount at the very beginning, and then you have a set amount that you pay back each month. Student loans are also installment loans. Anything where at the beginning they give you the amount, they say you're going to pay X amount of dollars back for the next X amount of time. The rate is this amount, it's all locked in. Those are installment loans. Credit cards are the big thing that's a revolving loan. The amount that you pay back is entirely determined on the amount that you borrow. And when you do pay it back, that available credit or that credit limit becomes available to you again to start spending it again. And because there's not a set beginning and end to a revolving loan, the rate can also fluctuate. So if you have an auto loan at 3%, and then a year down the road, auto loan rates in general go up quite a bit, your rate is still going to be locked in at whatever you had when you signed for the loan. Whereas credit cards, if the rates go up, your rate will also go up with it. There are also revolving lines of credit that you can use with installment loans. Like you can have a home loan and take equity out against your home, so you can borrow against what you already owe. Same thing, you borrow it and pay it back. But those are the two main differences between installment and revolving, and secured and unsecured. So loans will always be one of the two in each pillar, and having a nice mix of all those different types is what helps build your credit in the previous slide that we talked about. So speaking of revolving loans, the biggest type of revolving loans are credit cards. Who here that just came in, does anybody here already have a credit card open in their name by any chance? Yes? Okay, either of you guys? No? Hopefully after this, you will be able to understand them a little more, and when you do start to build credit, you'll kind of know what you're looking for. So credit cards, basically, you get your credit card, you have your total available credit. Normally, if you're just starting out and you don't have any credit established, the available credit limit's going to be lower, so you'll have maybe $1,000, $2,000, whatever. That is your credit limit. That is the maximum amount that you can spend. Credit cards also have balanced cycles. So this is a monthly billing period that your credit card usage is measured. Usually 30 days, but it's also not normally like the month of October, the month of November. Normally, like I think with the telco, it's the 15th to the 15th. So 15th of October through 15th of November is going to be your billing cycle. At the end of your billing cycle, you're going to get a statement in the mail. That statement is going to have normally 3 numbers on it. The first is going to be your minimum payment. That is the minimum amount that you need to make each billing cycle to remain current and to not go past due. It'll have your statement balance, which is the total amount that you spent in that billing cycle. And then it will have your total balance, which is the total amount that you have on the credit card. So if you have a credit card, let's say you've had it for a couple of years, you've racked up a balance, and you get your statement at the end of the billing cycle, it'll say, okay, so your credit limit is 10,000. Let's say you have a balance of 6,000 on there. And in that billing cycle, in that 30-day period, you spent $800 on your credit card. It'll say your total balance is 6,000. That's the total amount that you have currently on your credit card. It'll say the statement balance is 600. That's how much you've spent in that billing cycle. And then it will say minimum payment amount, and that's going to be something crazy low, like $24, or something really small. If you just pay this $24, you're not going to go past due, you're in good shape. So due date is going to be the day that you have to pay whatever you're going to pay. If you pay only the minimum balance, everything else is going to go into the next billing cycle. It's going to be added to your overall, total balance, and you're going to be charged interest on that. If you pay the full cycle balance by that due date, so if you spent $600 in that billing cycle and you pay that full $600 off, you're not charged any interest on the amount that you spent during that billing cycle. Compounding interest is basically interest that's charged on any balance that is left unpaid in excess of just the minimum payment that was made. This includes whatever you did, didn't pay in that billing cycle. It also includes previous interest and previous balances if you didn't pay those off in previous billing cycles either. So the biggest way that people get into credit card debt, and credit card debt is like the hardest thing to get out of because the rates are so high, is, they get a credit card, they don't really understand the ramifications that you have to pay the money back eventually. They may spend, $1,000 their first billing cycle and get that statement that says minimum payment is $24. And you think, cool, all I got to pay is 24 bucks and I'm good to go. And then you pay the $24. Their balance is now whatever that is, $976. They have to pay sometimes 30–40% interest on that. And then same thing, they go into the next billing cycle, spend another $1,000. They get their statement, they pay the minimum of 24 again. They now have a $2,000 balance. That's being charged interest. It grows and grows, and you end up with a credit card that has $10,000 limit. You owe $10,000 on it, and at that point, the interest that you're being charged, like the 30% or 40% or whatever crazy amount it can be on some credit cards, outweighs what the minimum payment is. So you can pay your $24 or your $36 or whatever your minimum monthly payment is, and then get hit with a $120 interest fee. And it is impossible to get out of, under that unless you have a lot of excess money that you can really throw with a credit card. Because the larger your balance with a really, really high interest rate, the more those interest charges are going to be. So the best way to avoid paying interest on a credit card is just pay off what you use as soon as possible. If you are diligent enough to just get the statement at the end of the month or look at it online, see what your full statement balance is and make one full payment, you're good to go. You're not going to pay any interest. What I do is I just log into my credit card app like a couple times a week and pay off the full balance at that point. So normally up by not much, it's $100, $50, whatever I spent in those couple days. But you don't need to carry a balance ever. I use my credit card for everything because I get a lot of points and rewards and things like that, which we'll talk about here in a second. But I pay it off, honestly, probably at least once a week, if not more. That way, number one, I'm staying on top of my spending. I know exactly how much I'm spending because I'm constantly checking it. I'm still earning the points because when you do get points on credit cards, you earn that point the second you swipe your card. But I'm also never paying any interest. So it's really all just free money coming back to me. Credit cards can really, really be used in your favor. You can get a lot of free stuff with them. It can really help build your credit if you use them responsibly, but you have to use them responsibly. Just because you get a credit card that has a $10,000 limit does not mean you have $10,000 to spend. You have to pay it back eventually. Do you have a question?
I just wondering, confusing between the current statement that, the statement balance and the current balance. So when you say it's the interest, will charge, so it's gotta be on top from the statement balance or the current balance?
The current balance. So the current balance, like if you have a credit card that has a $10,000 limit and you have a balance that is 6,000, that's 6,000 is the total amount that you currently have on the credit from however long you've had that balance. It's going to charge whatever your total balance is, or whatever like your total interest charge is on that full balance. Now, if you get, if you get a statement that says like your minimum payment is 24, your payment for this billing cycle is 600, but you still have a $6,000 balance, even if you pay the 600 on that billing cycle, like you're not gonna pay interest on that $600, but that 6,000 that's still on your balance, you're gonna be paying interest on that. Any money that is carried over outside of the due date from that billing cycle is going to be charged interest. Which is also why it's not fun, because if you have an $8,000 balance and the rate is 30% and they charge whatever that is, a $200 interest fee on top of that, you're now going to be paying interest on that interest. Like your now balance is $8,200. And so when you get charged 30% next time, you're getting charged interest on what you spent, as well as the other interest fees that have been added on. Which is why it's very easy to go into credit card debt and really hard to get out of it, because the rates are the highest on credit cards. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So also with credit cards, there are fees and there are rewards and points. So there's good things with credit cards also. Like I said, I love credit cards. My number one credit card I have is a Capital One, like Venture card is what it's called. And it gets me a lot of rewards and a lot of travel miles that I can use for hotels and airline tickets or whatever. Right now, I think I have like $700 available on my Capital One, and that's just in like the miles. If you go into the app and like kind of play around with using those miles as buying flights instead of dollar amount, it can be a lot more. And that's not a super high amount. Like I got plane tickets earlier this year I flew from here to Luxembourg to Spain, and then Spain back to here, and it was all in a dollar. It all came from just like rewards that I had. And I didn't pay any interest for those either, so it was truly just like a free flight. Let's talk about fees first. Fees, there are annual fees with some cards. Some will charge a yearly fee, others do not. I do not necessarily think that annual fees are the worst thing in the world, depending on what you're getting with that fee. So definitely like look into the fine print. My card again is the main one that I use is my Capital One card. That has, I think, a $70 a year annual fee. But with the amount of rewards that I get back, like I easily earn $1,500 a year in like points and rewards. Whereas some of the mile free or the travel cards that don't have an annual fee will only give you like $500 or $600 back. So for me, that $70 well offsets itself with what they give me. But not all cards are like that. So whenever you are shopping for a card down the road, a lot of times those who don't have credit cards right now are going to have to start with like a free or a student card. But when you build your credit and you're looking to start getting points and other fun stuff, just make sure you're looking at what the fees are and what you actually get with those fees. You might get late payment fees. So again, you have to be 30 days past due for negative payment activity on your credit card to go to the credit bureaus. But if you are sometimes 10 days past due or a week past due or whatever your financial institution charges, they may not report it to the credit bureaus as being late and it won't impact your credit, but you still might get a late payment fee for just paying the bank that late. And also cash advance fees. Never, ever, 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 ever take cash out against your credit card. It is so expensive. Like we talked about with the billing cycle, you get, 30% or whatever rate is if you don't pay your full balance back at the end, but if you do, it's free. If you do a cash advance, meaning you have a credit card that has a $10,000 limit and you go into the bank or go to an ATM and pull cash out against that, Number one, the interest rate is charged immediately. So if you pull $300 out, you're gonna get a 30% fee on that right then. Plus, they will also have a cash advance fee that will be tagged on top of that as well. So getting, a couple $100 out in cash against a credit card is going to end up being sometimes close to like 400 plus. If you absolutely have to, if there's no other way around it, do what you gotta do, but you should try to exhaust any other option before doing a cash advance or pulling cash out against a credit card. And now rewards and points, the fun part. So different credit cards offer different benefits. A really popular point or reward model that a lot of credit card companies use is cash back. So you will just swipe your credit card and then earn dollars back for every, amount that you swipe. A lot of times it's, every time you swipe your card, you get 1%, 5%, whatever, back in like an account that you could pull from. Sometimes cards will have extra things. So there could be cards that like you get double points back or double percent back if you use them at restaurants or gas stations or whatever. So if you do have credit cards that offer any kind of cash back or rewards, just look into what they're getting and use different cards for different purposes. Again, I have 2 credit cards that I use the most. I have my Amazon Prime card and then my Venture card. Everything I buy on Amazon, I use my Prime card with because I get, I think, 10% cash back with that, which is great. I get a lot of, take back on Amazon. Everything else I put on my travel card because I want to make sure I get as much. I really want to amplify my travel money as much as I can. I have friends who have multiple cards. They use one just for eating out. They'll use one just for gas. They use one just for this. I don't really have the energy to do all that in my head myself, but more power to you if you do. I would say when you are shopping for a credit card down the road that earns rewards, make sure you're looking for something that aligns with what you want. Points miles, you can earn point for every dollar spent. That can be redeemed for travel, gift cards, whatever. I have another friend who goes to Disney World all the time, so they have the Disney World card because that's what they, value the most. For me, it's travel. Some people are really loyal to like one specific airline, so they'll get that airline's credit card to really amplify that. Just make sure that you're getting the credit card that gives you the points and the rewards. That's something that you're actually going to use. If you don't travel a lot, getting a travel credit card is not going to benefit you. If you don't go to Disneyland a lot, that one's not going to benefit you. So just, do your research and make sure that you are getting a card that is, something you're going to want to use long-term. Also, I'm not a big fan of applying for a bunch of different credit cards and having a lot of them just because it's more that you have to manage. It will bring your credit score down a little bit, at least in the short term, because you have a lot of new credit right there. So my advice would just be get a few, good credit cards that you want to have long-term and kind of grow with those. And then last, we've got sign-up bonuses. So a lot of cards will offer bonuses if you spend a certain amount within the first few months. My Capital One card did this. If I spent, I think it was like 3,000 or 2,500 or whatever in the first 6 months, I got an extra 50,000 bonus miles. If you put everything on your credit card, again, you can make that happen, no problem. But yeah, look into what the bonuses are, read the fine print, get cards that, are aligning with your values and what you'd like, and make sure you pay everything back. You can pay it back as fast as you want, but do not carry money over or maintain a large balance on your credit card. Because number one, that can hurt your credit just by having, your available credit be here and your credit limit be here. If they're close, that can negatively impact your credit, and it's going to be costly. It costs a lot to have a credit card balance. Questions on credit cards? All right, how are we doing on time? Let's keep it pushing. So pulling your credit can be pulled when you are applying for a loan, an apartment, a job, or utilities. There are 2 different types of pulls, and it depends on what you're pulling the credit for, is how or what type of credit pull they do. So you can either do a soft pull or a hard pull. A hard pull on your credit normally occurs when you are applying for a loan. So if you're going to a bank account or you're applying for something online, and you actually are consenting to them doing a full credit check, they will do what's called a hard pull. That will reflect on your credit report. So when we were talking earlier about how it doesn't look super great if you go to a bunch of different lenders and apply in a short period of time, those are all hard pulls. Those will all reflect on your credit report that you've had a hard pull done, which can in turn impact your credit score. And when someone does a hard pull on your credit, they see your entire credit report. So they can see if you missed one payment on your car loan 2 years ago, they'll be able to see what date you missed it, how many days you missed it by, all that. They have a full look at your entire credit report, your entire banking history, every payment you've made on time when you've made it in the last 10 years or however long each individual item stays on there. The flip side are soft pulls. So a soft pull typically occurs with a background check if you're applying to rent a place, if you're applying for a new job. Anytime they do any kind of like general background check on you, a soft pull will be normally a part of that. Soft pulls do not reflect on your credit report and they have no impact on your credit score. So you can do as many of these as you want in as short of a period of time as you want. If you're applying for an apartment and you submit 15 applications in 1 week and they each do a soft pull on your credit, that's not going to impact your credit score at all. The flip side is that they don't get your full credit report. They just get the number. So if they're doing a soft pull with Experian or Vantage or Equifax or whatever, they will see whatever your credit score is, but they won't see any of the details on your credit report. And it just kind of helps give the lender or whoever a general idea of what your credit worthiness is in that regard. Questions on these? Yes.
So I would like to know how the soft pull can impact the credit score.
Yeah, so when we talked earlier, let's see if I can back it up a little bit. Right here, the new credit, how many loans you've recently opened or applied for. This basically just means that like, if you're going to 5 different bank accounts in one day or going online and applying for a bunch of different credit cards in a short period of time, each one of those is a hard pull because hard pulls only show up when you are actively requesting credit or like applying for credit. And if you do a lot of those in a short period of time, that is looked at as like red flag behavior because there's no reason why anybody would really need to apply for a ton of credit cards at once, unless you are, you know, trying to rack up a lot of money or do whatever. So it kind of is just a way to get people to borrow a little bit more responsibly and make sure that they are not just applying for any kind of credit, you know, unnecessarily or willy-nilly. Because if you do, it does have a slight impact on your credit. It's not much, only 10%, but it does impact you a little bit. Is your question? Okay, cool. So we were here. So reviewing your credit scores reflect what's on your credit report. This is just kind of a general idea of what a credit report looks like, but in actuality, they are much more detailed than this. You can see this will show like a car loan, a creditor, what type, how much the original loan is for, what your current balance is, all that good stuff. Checking your own credit score or your own credit report once a year is free and only results in a soft pull on your credit to pull your own once a year. If you are going to look at your credit report, annualcreditreport.com is the only place that you should be doing it. Freecreditreport.com, checkmycredit.com, any of those other ones. They may give you your credit report, but a lot of times will have a hidden fee. Sometimes it may result in a hard pull. Sometimes there's additional fine print. They may sell your information. Annualcreditreport.com is the only source for your free credit reports that is authorized and backed by the feds. So it is the official federal legit one. Check it once a year. I recommend, especially when you start to build credit, just take a review of your whole credit history and make sure everything looks good. If anything does not look accurate, report it immediately. I had a situation where my first time credit card, when I first got it, I, racked up a $3,000, whatever my limit was, and just kind of had that for years because I didn't know any better. When I finally started like paying it off and getting it down to zero, I thought I had it down to zero, but there was a like 1 penny interest charge that wasn't reflecting on my app. But it was reflecting to the credit bureaus. So I thought I was good to go. I stopped making payments. And then when I checked my credit report, I saw that it was showing as 90 days past due on a $0 balance. And my credit score had dropped like 100 points. So I disputed it, Had to talk to somebody, they told me it was a 1 penny, they reversed it, we got it all fixed, but it took about like 2 months to get my credit score back to where it was supposed to be. And if I didn't check that myself and, you know, be proactive in fixing the problem, if I would have gone to like a lender not knowing that was the issue to buy a car or something that was, you know, I needed right then, I would not have been approved and they would not have waited the 2 months for me to get this all handled. They would have said, sorry, figure it out. They don't want to hear your story. They just only want to know what's on the paper here. So make sure that if you see any errors, you fix them or report them, and try to get ahead of any other issues that may show up. Now, if you just want to check your credit score, you don't need the whole report, but you want to see kind of what your number is. You can do that as often as you'd like. Most mobile banking apps will have some sort of thing built in the app that'll tell you your credit score. You can also check them from any 3 of their credit bureaus apps or websites. So if you go to Equifax.com, Experian, TransUnion, you can make a little account and it'll tell you what the credit score is there. Again, it won't give you the full report, but it will tell you what your score is. Credit Karma is another one that will tell you your TransUnion and Equifax score. Credit Karma also gives you, it's not your official credit report, but it will tell you what you currently have reflecting on your credit within those 2 credit bureaus. NerdWallet will also tell you, and if you have an account with Telco, we show you your Vantage score as well, and most banking platforms do. So if you have Wells Fargo or Chase or BofA or whatever, a lot of times within the mobile app, they will have something in there that shows you what your credit score is. It'll tell you what credit bureau it's powered through, and you can get a rough idea of what your credit score is at all times. Another thing is that if you are checking your credit score on a regular basis, and then you realize one day that it's dropped by 50 points or something crazy has happened, that's kind of a red flag for you to maybe do some more digging and try to find out what could have been going on. Alrighty, predatory loans. Beware of predatory loans. Predatory lenders will often target those with no credit or with poor credit, and they'll use misleading or deceptive practices to try to attract you. I can't think of the name right now, but there's a really big auto lender out there that is very, very predatory. A lot of like check cashing places are as well. So these are just some warning signs. If you are talking to like maybe a financial institution or a bank that doesn't have the biggest reputation, if the pricing and the terms are unclear or like contradictory, if they give you a lot of additional fees, if there's a fee just to start the loan, if there's like a prepayment penalty, that's on here also. If any bank account or financial institution says that we are going to charge you a fee if you pay the loan off early, that is a big red flag. If the approval is super quick and super easy, if you're doing something online and you know that your credit is not the best or you don't have any credit and they are approving you for some crazy dollar amount, and that's a big red flag as well. If they're pushy, if they're aggressive, if they're not willing to answer questions, these are all signs of predatory lenders. Generally speaking, if we all are on top of our credit right now from a young age, we are paying our credit cards back, we are keeping our balances low, we are never going to run into this problem because you can always have major bank accounts available to you. I personally do most of my banking with credit unions, but I do have some big banks for credit cards because they tend to offer better rewards. The predatory lenders really go after those who are not eligible to get approved by like those big banks or the main institutions. And they will hit you with a lot of hidden fees. They'll sometimes charge crazy, crazy interest rates. And it can get you into like a cycle of debt that is truly impossible to pay off. This is what it can look like to repay a loan. We have it getting kind of more predatory as it goes along. So I have seen some predatory lenders that have interest rates that are over 100%. I saw somebody that had a credit card for some place that it was 180%, which is, it should be illegal, I think. If you look at this chart to see how much you pay over, this is a 5-year, $10,000 loan based on the interest rate. So you get a loan for 5 years, 10,000, you make the minimum payment every month for 5 years. How much will you pay? 5%, it's just over 11,000. So over 5 years, you've only paid about $1,300 in interest. That is a pretty normal amount to pay. 5% is actually a pretty good interest rate for a personal loan. You're gonna see that more for like an auto loan, 5 or 6% rates for those. 10, 15%, this is getting more into like what a personal loan might look at. Or like look like, so 12,748 or about 1,400. Again, your principal balance is 10,000, that's the initial amount that you took out, so for a 15% loan, over 5 years, you're paying an extra about $4,000 in interest. It's not a fun number, but for borrowing, that is, you know, kind of the way it goes. 30%, we're looking at like, a lot of credit cards are in the 30% range. And you can see right there, that's almost double. We're at about pushing 20%, which is why it's not a good idea to, again, maintain a balance. Also, it's trickier with credit cards because those aren't things you just pay off in 5 years. It's not a set secured installment loan like that. It is revolving. So if you pay it off, but then, you know, charge more onto it, you are always going to be stuck paying more interest than, you know, what your payment actually is. And then when you get into like the 50, 100% loans, I mean, that 100% loan in 5 years for $10,000, you're paying over 50 grand. And I have seen loans that are higher than 100%. That is impossible to get out of. If you are in a position where you need a predatory loan, that means you're already probably not in the best shape financially. And now you're being charged interest that is, you know, 5 times the amount that you borrowed. It's impossible to pay that back. It's going to keep killing your credit. You're going to always have debt attached to your name. And it's a very scary and not fun cycle to be a part of. But it can be avoided. Now that we're all young, we just want to make sure we make good, smart credit decisions now, so we do not end up in that little green bar space. All right, so just a couple tips here to build and maintain good credit, a few takeaways. Number 1, take out loans responsibly. So it is necessary to have credit in order to build credit. You can't really go through your life without having any credit ever attached to your name. For one, because if you don't have a credit card or you don't start building credit at some point, you're going to reach a point in your life where you have to buy a car, you have to buy a house, you have to do something that's going to require you to have some kind of established credit. And if you don't have that, you'll have to get a cosigner, you're going to have a higher rate. It just becomes a little bit less fun. But you also want to take out the loan responsibly. You don't just want to apply for anything that comes your way. And you want to be really mindful about the credit that you are applying for. Make your payments on time, monthly, do not miss them. If you do miss a payment by a couple days, you know, life happens, it's not a big deal, but don't make that a habit. If you miss a payment by 30 days, just be aware that that is going to negatively impact your credit. But again, it's not going to kill you. If you make one payment by a month or you miss a payment by a month one time, the longer you get away from that, the less it will negatively impact your credit, the less weight it will have, and your credit will start to rise. So just don't make a habit out of it, but really, really prioritize making your monthly payments on time. That is the number one thing you can do to continue to grow credit and build good credit habits. Stay below 30% of your credit limit on cards. 10% is like ideal, but 30% is kind of the magic number. So if you have a credit card that has a $1,000 limit, you don't want to carry a balance of more than 300. You want to keep whatever balance that you carry on your card, 30% or less. Again, I don't ever carry a balance. If you just pay your statement balance off in full every month, that will always be, you know, low. Or for me, like I pay mine off minimum once a week. So my credit limits are, or my credit balance is at like 6 or 7% of what my limit is. And your credit stays in great shape. So just because you have $1,000, $5,000, whatever, does not mean you need to max your card out to that amount. You want to keep it at 30% of what your credit limit is or less. And that will maintain the amounts owed part of your credit and keep that in good shape. And then last but not least, do not apply for credit cards unnecessarily. I think credit cards are great. I love credit cards. You can really like game the system to get a lot of free stuff and not give really anything. But you need to be very smart and strategic about it. So just because, you know, you are out and you get an offer and it says sign here for this signing bonus and yada, 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 doesn't mean it's going to be a good financial decision for you. That is now a hard pull on your credit. That is now a new credit line that you have to maintain. A credit card isn't something that you just pay off when it's done and it's done. It's something that ideally you should have and grow with and maintain for a long period of time. It's like a child, you know, you don't want to have a bunch of kids you have to take care of. You want to make sure that you are, you know, doing them responsibly and they're ones that you actually want and want to grow with. Store credit cards are also a big thing to try to avoid. I mean, if you're shopping at like Kohl's or whatever, and they say, you know, sign up today and you'll save $200 or whatever it is, that's great. You will save that money in the short term, but it is going to be a hard pull on your credit. And you now have an extra credit card you have to look into. Sometimes they have annual fees. Sometimes they have 50% interest rates they don't tell you about right then. Also, on the off chance that you do get that credit card and you like it and you use it and it's a good credit card and you have really good payment history on it for 5 years, and then Kohl's goes out of business, that credit card's gonna be closed, and then you're gonna lose all that history and payment activity that you built on it. So they're not good, long-term reliable cards to have. Not the end of the world. Like if there is a store that you shop at and you want to use their credit card for that store's points, that's fine. But I would A, do it sparingly, and B, only use that card at that store. Don't use it anywhere else, because you don't want to be in a position where you're like reliant on that credit card as your primary, you know, card, and then have anything happen to the store to where you lose all that payment activity. All right, that's all I got. Just a little bit about us. We have been in the business for about 85 years. We have 400,000 plus members. We are in the top 1% of credit unions in the nation, 37 branches all over Northern California. We go down from San Jose up to Sacramento. And if anybody is interested in any of our additional products and services or anything that I talked about today, you have any other questions, you want to know about our credit cards, you can come and talk to me before you guys leave. Berkeley branch is the closest one. It's just right down the corner from us. It's like a 3-minute walk from here. That QR code right there will take you to our virtual branch if you want to talk to somebody face-to-face over Zoom. Otherwise, I can set an appointment for you. I can answer any other questions. And yeah, we've got 2 more workshops coming up. 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about fraud, how to avoid it, how to spot it, all the different kind of scams that are out there. There are a lot of them. And you know, they are growing and growing as technology grows. So if you want to learn how to be cyber safe and how to protect yourself from fraud, come to that. It is fittingly on Halloween Day, which is a scary day to talk about a scary topic. And then 2 weeks after that, achieving financial freedom. We're going to talk a little bit about long-term stuff, IRAs, 401ks, very introductory stuff on like investing. So if you want to start getting in the mindset of building long-term wealth and achieving that financial freedom for yourself down the road, come to that one as well. And that's all I got for you guys. We do have a little survey here with that QR code. If you guys would not mind scanning the code and filling it out, it just takes a minute. And yeah, thank you guys for coming and spending your Thursday afternoon with me. Come see me if you have any questions. Otherwise, take care, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.